Hey everybody, once again it's time to work on radios. Now that I got the console fixed and the interior taken care of, I pulled out the truck radio and I'm ready to put in the real thing. And I have a nice brand new Kenwood unit to plug in the dash, and I'm going to adapt it into the wiring that was there from the amplifiers and get this thing installed and I'll say get a modern radio in the car. Someday maybe I'll want to go back to a standard one, but for now I'm going to try to do something with modern technology to help me enjoy the car better. Well, my task for putting the radio in here is I need to straighten out the kind of kludge of wiring that I've got here. And what I had done was I had the factory wiring harnesses from the Avalanche truck radio and those plugs, and some things I wired in through a conventional GM connector, and some things I wired in through the Kenwood ones that I'm sending to the back, where I'll have to make a jumper to plug things in and hook them together. And what I think I'm going to do for future simplicity, I'm going to call it, is I think I'm going to, the Kenwoods will stay because they're in real nice cables, but I will cut the harness here and splice it into the remaining wires here. And also I got a new GM, a new connector, and the one I had before didn't have both wires, battery and illumination, and I had to run a separate illumination wire. So now I've got the new kit that came from Crutchfield with the radio, has the proper one with both wires. So I'll cut that dude out of there and properly splice that one in. And my biggest trick right now is just I need to go back to the color codes. I have them all here. To the color codes of the connectors of the truck radio, and go back and pick out what I hooked up to where, get them transferred across to here, and then splice in the official Kenwood connector there. And that ought to make the wiring all happy. And then I can work on plugging the radio into the dash, putting the kit in, and making the jumper for the back. And once that's all done, then I ought to be able to plug it in. So we'll see how it goes here. Clip that one. That looks a little smaller, so that's probably like an 18 gauge. Come on, don't break it. Go in the slot. There we go. Alright. This dash for radio just had so many wires in it, it's time to pull on that, make sure it's good. It's time to get them a little better organized. More permanent, I'll call it. Alright. Because I will put in, there's the clip back there. Then I can plug this new one in. Yellow, orange, yeah, like that. Alright. Now I'm going to sort out a few more wires here. Get all the speaker wires here, we'll get those hooked up next. I got the battery and the power stuff. So I got a bunch of these here that I just need to crimp together. And if for some reason there's one that I don't need, I'll tape it back turn it back and tape it. But I kind of think those are all necessary. 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, let's see what else we got. Okay, more crimping. Well, I finished crimping and splicing, and now I've got the Kenwood's connector spliced into the main vehicle connector. And it turned out that this extra wire that I added with the other plug, which is for dash illumination of the radio, this radio apparently doesn't use. It must have full-time illumination and not dim with the dash. At least I don't have a wire to connect for that. So anyway, it's taped back. So that gives me that side. And I would just say, as the nice thing is that the aftermarket is finally, maybe they're doing this a long time, but the color codes on the wires on the connector to the car are the same as the ones, which is a Metra connector, and then Kenwood's connector has exactly the same color code, which is kind of nice for sorting through things. So then I'll go back to the other side here, and I've got these, and I need to start matching them up here. And the way I match those up, because it was the truck, I have the service manual diagrams. When I did the 2001 Avalanche radio, I went through the connectors and picked out what wires I had. So now I just need to go backwards and do the same thing, and then cut here and splice into there, and then I should be in good shape. Well, it's been a couple hours of cutting and splicing, literally, but there's the radio to the first connector, there's the second connector that goes to the battery and would be dimming if I used it, and then the outside of the connector's got another set that goes, this one is the front speakers that go to the back of the car. This is the rear speakers with a turn-on lead that go to the back of the car. There's nothing to turn on right now. It's dead-headed back there, but it's there if I needed it, if I decide to put the amp in and rewire some things. So now I think I've gotten to the point where all the wiring is pretty much done. Well, in order to put the new radio in the Camaro, I'm intending to put it in. This car had amplifiers in the back, and for the moment I'm bypassing the amplifiers, but the speaker wires all run from the back of the car. They were routed from the front to the back to the amplifiers in the well, and then back from there out to the speakers. So in order to replace the Kenwood amp, at least temporarily, without totally tearing up all the wiring, I bought a pigtail that matches the output connector of the amp for the Kenwood amp. It's a Molex connector, it's a standard one, and they actually sell these as a double-ended pigtail that you can cut and connect to whatever you want through an electronics supply house. I think I got these through Newark. And then I had to really hunt, but I found from a cable company, I bought these connectors which match the input connector on the amplifier, on the Kenwood amp. So what we're doing is the wires come from the back on a Kenwood cable that already has an end to match this. So they're going to come back, route into this connector, route out to this one, which will go out to the speakers. And then if I come back and decide I really want to put the amps back in the car, I can do that. So while I have this pigtail with the connector on it, the one I ordered has 16 gauge wire, which is pretty heavy. I even took the grounds, which will end up going together, and already tied them together into one. But those three number 16s are really too big for this connector. So So I got some hookup wire and red, green, and black, and when you get inside here, these terminals are pretty close together. So I got some 18 gauge hookup wire, which I will use. I'm going to solder the 3 hookup wires in and put the connector together, and then I'll splice the pigtail to the end. One thing I was always taught with soldering is make sure you have a good mechanical connection, and the 18 gauge wire goes through the eyes, and I can bend it back. The biggest thing is to make sure you keep an air gap between them. Probably should have my respirator on because this is lead vapor, but I'll try not to breathe much of it. In the smoke, that is. Come on. And the plastic connectors are designed to take heat from soldering, but you do have to be a little careful. If you overheat it, you can melt things and heat the wire up. And then add the solder heat to the wire, not to the tip. There we go. Well, it looks like I got good flow all the way around. These things are kind of delicate. It's not my favorite. Doing connectors is not my favorite thing, as they would say. I think I'll put a wrap of electrical tape around the outside of them, just as insurance, I'll call it. You can see that they're not touching. Just ensure that the metal connector shell doesn't contact any of the solder joints. These Kenwoods are a special DIN connector. They're kind of a horseshoe shape that you can buy several different kinds of these, and the standard one, everything's in a circle. But if you look at these guys real close, the bottom two are actually vertical, not circular. It's, like I said, it's a horseshoe shape. And it was kind of hard to find these, actually. What is it? I think Show Me Cables was the company, if I remember right. And then there's a connector shell with a tab that goes in like so. And then this one goes on the other side. I should probably clamp it down because it's got a little device here to hold the wires in place so they don't get pulled out, like so. Okay, so these two halves snap together. The empty shell goes on the end. And then there's a tab up here, like so. And then you got this tab on the back side that when you snap it in, there she is. So that's one side. So I got to wrap my pigtails together here and solder them. I could use solderless connectors, but as long as I've got the system fired up. And then I know what the color code is here. My hookup wire comes in red, green, and black, so I'm going to pretend this is a boat and do it in nautical terms. Red is port bow, right? So left side. And we'll lay these out and solder them up. And green is starboard. So that should be the right-hand speaker. Then I get those 3 guys, solder them up and tape them. I could actually use a heavier iron for this than the little one, but it'll work. Just got to give it time. Trouble getting that one to warm up. Come on. Probably because the tip is sitting on the vise. There, that's better. You're really supposed to put the iron on the part and then put the solder on the part and get things to heat up, but sometimes you need to get a little flux on the iron and a little solder on the iron so that it transfers heat into the joint. It's kind of an art. Okay, so that's ground. Left hand, right hand, and this connector is for the front. And then I have another pair here and another connector, and this will be for the rear speakers, right and left. So that gets you all four. When I jumper this across, then I can go up front and connect the stereo, the new stereo, to the plugs that go to the back, and make it all work. So see here in the back of the Camaro, this one is the speaker connector. It comes out and goes to all the leads. And these two are the DIN connectors. There's one and two that are extension cables that came from the front. So now I just need to hook in my jumper cable. Sorry, I had to set the camera down for a minute, but so then that's what I end up with. Jumper from, there's rear to rear, front to front. I can tuck these back into the spare tire well probably when I'm done. The other one was for the Yamaha amp, and which I'm not using either right now, but for now the speakers were all hooked up to that Kenwood. Now I can go start working on the install back on the front. Now I need to figure out how to stow it all and get the radio mounted. Alright, so now I need to put the kit together, and the first thing they told me to do is you get this front piece and this thing they call a kit frame, and it snaps together, and then they want it screwed together, and it looks like there are holes in the corners for the appropriate screws. I just need to figure out which ones, and then I'll run those in. Well, what I'm working with is I'm using this kit that came with the radio that came from Crutchfield, and it's a Metra kit, and I haven't been able to find an exact number on it, but it's because it's a bunch of different pieces. This tray says it's a 4900. Faceplate, I think, said that, I don't know, I can't see it anymore. I want to say, I think it said, one of them said it was a 4200. And then it comes with a couple of plastic brackets that appear to fit back in here. And then the radio itself, of course, comes with a sleeve, one of these. And there's also one other plate in here that isn't in it's in the kit, but it's not in the instructions. So I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that one for sure. It looks like if you needed it as a spacer, that it would snap in into the faceplate piece. It's got tabs for that, but I don't know yet if there's any reason that I need that. It must be in the event that things are loose. Because when you get to the end, you want to do is put this standard chassis in here, like so. And once that goes in and gets snapped in, take this back out of there because I'm not ready yet. The chassis wouldn't slide through there. So this must be a spacer for if you have a smaller chassis. No, that won't fit either. I thought maybe if your chassis, you didn't want to use the sleeve, but it's too small for that. So I'm going to set that one aside for now. Also, the instructions, they talk in several places about putting things together and securing them with hex screws. So this is the general set of screws we got, and there are some flat a domed head but flat underneath. There are some flat heads that are tapered, conical. There is one that is a Phillips with a lock washer and a flat washer underneath the lock washer as a set. I'll be working to figure out where those all go. In the second bag are the hex screws. There are 4 hex screws, and then there's another set of different kinds of screws, and so I'm not sure what goes where. But I guess I'm going to follow their instructions. If they say hex screws, and there are 2 in this bag, there are 2 studs that don't have a head at all. They're just serrated on the bottom, and then there's a nut that goes underneath them. Well, the hex screws are self-tapping ones, so that seems to be okay. Can't do it in the middle of the air. Okay, 4 hex screws. Then they bring you, or provide for you, this plate, this tray. And it looks like with the holes downward, you take this tray and line it up, and it snaps into the front. Get the clips to start here. There it goes. That looks good. I thought some of those screws were going to be used to fasten this together, but I was mistaken. Then the next one is that the instructions say to break off the tabs on these brackets. That doesn't seem too difficult, but I'm going to step away and get my utility knife, and I'm going to score those and either cut them or score them and break them. I mean, heck, change my mind here. I'm going to put side cutters on. We'll see how that works. One. Let's see if that doesn't work. I'll trim them with the utility knife. Watch your eyes, I guess. Alright, and ultimately those are going to go in this way into the existing mounting point, and that looks like it'll work just fine. Just try to catch things so they don't fly. This one says left. Just got to get the right way here. There we go. Tighten that up. Tighten that up. Maybe you could use a regular wrench, but it seems like a pair of pliers is plenty. Actually, the instructions say a pair of pliers, and the needle nose is working just fine. So, that looks good. Presuming these screws are supposed to, some set of them is supposed to thread in there. That isn't it. So I would say at this point, we've got that. And the brackets are on. There are 3 sheet metal nuts, and I'm missing one. I think I have to go in the basement and pull one more out. Somehow I lost one there. And then if we put that in, it sort of appears that the plastic holes on the bottom don't perfectly line up. But I think if I go get the right screws, I think they'll sneak in there. Well, since I'm putting things together that hadn't been together on this car before, I was missing a few screws. I went into my master screw kit and found some that are not identical but close. These screws are, washer head 7mm. This is a 7mm head with a washer underneath it. It's slightly different, but it looks like it should thread into these nuts. And these were designated for part of the console lid, and I've already got that taken care of, so I'm not too worried about that. So I'm going to use these, and we'll, this stage, I'm going to need these wires out where I can reach them. So all the wiring's been tucked back into the back. So we'll sneak this in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and run these into the speed nuts. And my only concern is that the lower holes don't look like they line up perfectly. However, I'm not done yet. I kind of think that there's enough slop in the system that I can sneak them in there. I mean, in principle, these are just little plastic brackets. If I really needed to, I could file out the hole just a millimeter or so and it would be fine. But actually, I snuck them in there and they seem to be working. So I got 4 bolts, 4 screws, whatever, holding that together. And again, trial fit kinds of things. The tray is in the back and it settled in nicely and the wires are all back there. And this plugs into the radio and this plugs into the radio. So let me set those inside for a second. And then this plate, it's not going to fit. I guess it sneaks underneath. You just got to apply a bunch of force, but then it's in there. Alright, now I got to take it back apart and tighten the screws. So I'm going to just hold that up as high as I can and tighten it. I suppose you could take the shift plate up and move it back slightly, but that's not a lot of fun either, so I guess the answer is to bend the bezel a little bit. Put it up there. I'm supposed to have in the kit here, where are they? Radio cover plate screws in N. Okay, well I got the bezel on and I got 4 screws out of my kit that fit, and I had to put one more sheet metal screw, one more U-nut in here. But now I got that all fastened, so now we're down to I think plugging in the wiring harnesses and the antenna in this little metal box. So let's see how that goes. And before I do, take a second. There's also this radio also has a microphone. I'm not quite sure where I would clip it in this car yet. Before I plug the radio in to the dash, It's got a piece of double stick tape. So you got a couple of big heat sinks, one plug. I'm not sure what that one's for, but probably additional controls. Or maybe you plug your Sirius XM into that. Anyway, it's an additional input. And then these are high-level outputs to feed an amplifier, rears, fronts, and subwoofers. Who knows, maybe I'll still use that. So before I plug this other piece of metal in there, I think what I'm going to do is feed this through, because I can reach around the back of the console right now. As I will plug that in, I'll decide where I want to hook the microphone, and then I'll tuck the rest of the wire just behind the end here. And then this goes in the hole. Gotta get it fed in there straight. Alright, so the back of it here. Okay, so that metal casing is in the hole, and the back of it rests on the plastic shelf that we put in there. Now what we need to do is they want to bend up some tabs to secure the piece. So it looks like it does work. If you get down here, there's a tab right where my finger is. There are a number of tabs, but it looks like you take the ones right up here to the front and bend that up, and then there's one over here, and you bend that up, and there's probably even a couple of them here on the bottom that I'll just take the ones on the end. There's one there. There's one there. So we'll set the camera down a second and push those a little harder. Get my screwdriver going here. Alright, I think that's in there pretty good now. It doesn't feel like it wants to go anywhere. Okay, so I got that all slid in, and once I bent the tabs, it's all slid in there and locked. This model I bought, I paid a little extra, and it's still got a CD player. I've got a box of CDs yet. Most of them, what I've done is moved them over and put them on USB. So this one's got USB. I figured that gets me both ways, as I can do it either way. And the radio's got Bluetooth and all the modern stuff. And frankly, it looks pretty nice in there. I'm happy with it. I would have kind of liked if it would have sat back just a little further, but I think it's going to be fine. It doesn't get in the way of, well, I don't use the ashtray anyway, it doesn't get in the way of the shifter. You can take the faceplate off and take it away. So I'm going to see if it powers up. I'm sorry at this stage, I'd like to let you listen to it, but the copyright restrictions on YouTube won't let me retransmit FM radio. So this part I'm just going to voice over. This radio turned out, it's pretty nice. You can see all the different modes. It's got different colors. It's got all kinds of knobs and things that I need to get tinker with and understand how to set up. It sounds very nice. I did have one thing I needed to change, and that is that I did have advice from Crutchfield. I asked them if I could
on the fronts and on the rears separately if I could take the left and right channels and share the ground. And they said, yes, that won't hurt anything. But they did say, be alert for distortion or any other problem. And as I got to working on this, at higher volumes, as you got up, I think it was around 20 or 22, I did start to get some distortion in the channels. So I went back and took the common ground out, gave each one their own ground. Those old Kenwood connectors are 8 pins, and I went back and researched them, and I found a spare pin that wasn't being used for anything else, and wired a separate ground for the speakers, both on the front and on the rear. And now you can crank it up. It really sounds good, and you can make it really loud to the point where I don't know that I'll need those amps again or the old Kenwood amp again, but who knows, may try it. Any case, that's how you put one of these radios in a Camaro.
Well, now that I have the radio installed, it's time to do some setup. Based on copyright rules, I can't play you a radio station, but I have a USB stick here with a copy of the 1812 Overture on it that's public domain and copyright and free. And I'm going to use that as a reference as we go through. When you go through and set this up, I'm going to back this up a minute. So the radio gives you a number of different things that you can go after. So when I'm going to hit the USB here, it's probably going to reset itself, but that's all right. So you hit the button and you get function, and then among the functions are our audio control, the display, and if you go into display, you can change the color, and they've got multiple zones, so you can change the color of the display in the center, and you can change the color of the perimeter, and you can make it do all kinds of fancy things. I chose this blue, and the display when I'm outside of this menu, the display would be blue and matching that. I was trying to pick one that would show up well through my when I'm trying to read this out in bright sunlight and I'm wearing my sunglasses, because it can be a little difficult, and if you don't have the right color, it doesn't come through well. So anyway, you've got those choices, and color select. You can change the dimming, the brightness, the kinds of text. There's a little level meter that pops up down here in the corner that you can turn on and off. So that kind of gets you through that. And there's different modes that you can set up. This is where you go in and set the clock. So I'm going through in audio control. So there's one for subwoofer level, and I don't have a subwoofer, so I'm not going to use that. You can manually set different equalizers and bass boosts and loudness, and right now I've got it, level 1. I haven't tinkered with that a whole lot. I don't need to set the subwoofer other than, it's set to be on. No, I thought I had that off. Okay, subwoofer is set to off. The fader, I've bumped the rear up just a little bit because of the size of those speakers. It's just a little bit of an offset. Being that those are higher powered speakers. Right or wrong, it feels about right so far. And balance I leave alone. The volume offset, volume offset at the moment is 0. My speakers are, the rear ones carry more power than the front ones, but they'll all carry the, 23 or 25 watts out of this unit, continuous. So I think I'm okay there. I'm not going to tinker with that further at the moment. see, where was I? Fader, balance, sound effects, oh, speaker size. Well, I've got 4x6s in the front, and I have 6x9s in the rear, and there are also settings for whether you have tweeters. And the rear, the 6x9s have a tweeter, but I'm not going to try to program that separately. These speakers are old school, and I think they've got their, I'll say, crossovers built in, so I'm just going to let it send the power to them. And so when we come out of there, and so I'm going to leave the crossovers alone. It's the frequency, it's called through, so it's just sending everything to the fronts. And there's a gain, which again goes to be 0. And the rears are the same way. It's just that it's straight through, and there's no modification because of the system that I have. Now this one for DTA, I haven't set this one up before, but position would be all or front right, front left. Front all is what I'm going to set for, which is for both front passengers. And we back out. Distance, this is the one I haven't set up yet. Front left. They're all, I measured them out. It's pretty much 3 feet. It's like 3 feet right to the center console. See what these say. 0. Okay, I'm going to leave the gains alone. Alright, position. I think I'm there. That was front all. And then there's one called the car. What kind of car type do you have? And it's off, but those are my choices, so I think this one gets a compact. And then the rear speaker location. Gee, I guess that's probably called the deck. It's certainly not in the door. Then you get back to where you could tinker with equalizers, which I'm going to just leave alone for the moment. sounds pretty good working through those, 35-year-old speakers. Well, maybe someday I'll upgrade those, but these are Yamahas from, vintage 1985 or 6 probably, so not bad. Sure works better than that old truck radio that I had in here. And I've still got some playing to do probably with the tuning, but it works very well. So a few things to tinker with, but that's my project. I hope you enjoyed that video. If so, please subscribe to my channel.